My dad disowned me because his new wife didn't want that garbage in their life. Then, he demanded I sign away the house. My mom left me, so I did this and watched them lose their minds. All right, Reddit. Here's what went down. My dad sat me down 3 months ago, looked me in the eye, and told me to stop calling him dad. His new wife was pregnant, and they didn't want their baby knowing I existed. Then he slid a stack of papers across the table and asked me to sign over the house my dead mom left me. I didn't sign, but I need to back up so you get the full picture. I'm Nick, 25 male. This whole thing started 22 years ago when my mom was in college. She got pregnant. My dad, Gavin, had been with her about 8 months. The second she told him, he sent her one text saying he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility, then changed his number. My mom kept me. Her parents, Pop and Nana, weren't thrilled at first. Pop sat her down with a calculator and walked through the numbers of raising a kid solo at 20. But the second I showed up and he held me, all that math went out the window. He looked at Nana and said something like, "Guess we're doing this." And they did. Pop handled the 5 a.m. feedings so my mom could sleep before class. Nana covered evenings. My mom worked part-time at a vet clinic and studied at night. She ran on maybe 4 hours of sleep for years. Gavin sent $0 during this time. 0 phone calls. Nothing. I had a good childhood. Pop stuck glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling. Nana made me pancakes every Saturday. I had my own room in their place up in northern New York, and I was a happy kid. I didn't spend my time thinking about where my father was because I didn't need to. Then he showed up. I was 6, sitting on the porch eating a popsicle, and some guy pulled into the driveway in a blue sedan. My mom's face went white through the screen door. He hadn't come for me. He'd heard through the grapevine that she'd just gotten out of a relationship and figured he'd take another shot. She shut him down, but he kept coming back. Eventually, he switched tactics and started asking about me instead. Said he wanted to be a father. Said he'd changed. My mom let him visit every other Saturday. I think part of her felt guilty, not about anything she'd done, but about what I didn't have. She'd see me watching other kids at the park with their dads, and she'd read something into it even if it wasn't there. She carried this weight about raising me without a father, like it was somehow her fault Gavin turned out to be who he was. So she let him in, against her instincts, for me. And honestly, those visits were great. When you're 6, a dad is just a guy who shows up with remote control cars and lets you eat pizza with no rules. My mom had bedtimes and vegetable requirements. Gavin had arcade tokens and 0 boundaries. What I didn't realize was that Gavin spent most of those visits mining me for information about my mom. He'd slip the questions in between games. We'd be racing remote control cars, and he'd casually ask if mom had any friends who came over. We'd be eating pizza, and he'd ask if she ever talked about him. I was 6. I answered everything honestly because why wouldn't I? He wasn't building a relationship with me. I was the back door into my mom's life. And the worst part is, he was good at it. He made me feel like I was his little buddy, like we had this special thing. That's what still bothers me about it. I didn't even know I was being played. I was just happy. Took me years to figure that out. After months of wearing her down with those Saturday visits, Gavin went full court press. Flowers. Cooking dinner for the 3 of us. Playing the reformed man role like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror. And my mom, after years of carrying everything alone, let her guard down. I used to judge her for that. Took me a long time to stop, but she wasn't stupid, and she wasn't weak. She was a woman who'd been doing everything by herself since she was 20, and here was a guy offering to share the weight. Gavin read her perfectly. He gave her just enough warmth, just enough help, to make her believe he was different. So when he proposed after about a year, she said yes. The first year of the marriage was fine. Gavin was on his best behavior. Then the cracks started showing up, and they didn't stop. It started with a move. Gavin worked as a regional sales manager for an industrial supply company. Told my mom he'd gotten a territory reassignment about 4 hours south down near Albany. Better territory, bigger commissions. My mom pushed back hard. Her parents were close. Her job was here. My school, my friends, everything. But Gavin did what he always did. He made it sound like the only rational option. Projected income numbers, cost of living comparisons, tax benefits. He talked about uprooting our lives like he was presenting a quarterly strategy, not making a decision that would affect actual human beings. My mom caved. She thought that's what marriage was. Compromise. Except Gavin had already found the house and put an offer on it before she even agreed to go. Her yes was a formality. She put $42,000 into the down payment. Every dollar she'd saved over years. The house went into both names, but her cash made the deal happen. Once we got to the new city, my mom applied to every vet clinic and animal hospital within 30 miles. Nothing panned out. Gavin kept suggesting she just stay home. Take care of the house. Handle me. Framed it like he was doing her a favor. But with no support system and a husband who kept pushing the stay-at-home angle, She eventually stopped applying. That's exactly where he wanted her. Dependent. Isolated. Then came the financial control. Gavin tracked every dollar she spent. Receipts for groceries. If she bought anything beyond food or cleaning supplies, he'd go cold and question her judgment. One time burned into my memory permanently. She bought me a pair of sneakers for school. $38 from a clearance rack. My old ones had holes in them. Gavin saw the receipt and told her to return them. Said they weren't a necessity. My mom cried in the car on the way to the store. I was in the back seat. I was 10. I remember the exact price of those shoes because of what her face looked like that day. Another time, I needed supplies for a school science fair. About $25 total. Gavin found the receipt and spent an hour telling her she should have asked first. She returned half the stuff. I stood next to a half-finished board at the fair, while every other kid had put together projects with lights and moving parts. Got a C. The embarrassment wasn't about the grade. It was knowing we had the money. Gavin just didn't think I was worth spending it on. The arguments at home were constant but never loud. That wasn't Gavin's style. He didn't yell. He'd just twist things around calmly until my mom started questioning whether she remembered stuff right. I'd sit in my room with headphones on, pretending I couldn't hear her voice cracking through the walls. One night when I was 12, I came downstairs to get water and walked into the middle of one of their arguments. Gavin was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of receipts fanned out in front of him, going through them one by one, asking my mom to justify each purchase. She was standing at the counter with her arms crossed, trying not to cry. I stood in the doorway for maybe 10 seconds before I opened my mouth. Stop talking to her like that. Gavin looked at me with this expression I'll never forget. Not angry, amused, like a 12-year-old standing up to him was the funniest thing he'd seen all week. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Go back to bed, buddy. This is grown-up stuff." My mom cut in before I could respond. "Go upstairs, baby. I'm fine." But her voice was different. She wasn't backing him up. She was protecting me from getting on his radar. I went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. Lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to his voice drone on for another hour downstairs. That was the night I figured out something no kid should have to piece together at 12. My mom wasn't staying with Gavin because she loved him. She was staying because he'd made it so she couldn't leave. No job, no savings, no one within 4 hours who could help. He'd trapped her, and she didn't even have anywhere to go. My mom was 34 when she found out she had ovarian cancer. Stage 3. I was 13, old enough to understand and too young to handle it. She told me straight at the kitchen table. No sugarcoating. Said she was sick. Said she was going to fight. Said I was going to be okay. I believed her because I had to. You'd think a cancer diagnosis would snap even the worst version of a husband into gear. Instead, Gavin pulled out a notepad at the kitchen table and started listing costs, treatment estimates, hospital stays, prescriptions. Everything came down to the same question for him. What does this cost me? He didn't have a separate mode for his wife's cancer. He processed it the same way he'd process going over budget at work. Then he put the notepad down, looked at my mom, and said, "Between the mortgage, the car, and monthly expenses, I don't see where this fits. There's no room in the budget." My mom stared at him. Then she asked, "Room in the budget for what exactly?" "For all of this. The treatments. It's not realistic, Grace. Call your parents." I was standing in the hallway when I heard that. Didn't say a word. Just stood there, 13 years old. Something changed in me that day. For good. I stopped seeing Gavin as a bad dad. I started seeing him for exactly what he was. A guy who only kept people around when they were useful. Within 2 weeks, Pop showed up with his truck. 4-hour drive, walked through the front door, looked at my mom and said, "You got bags packed?" She nodded. "Then let's go home." That was it. No lecture, no questions about why she'd stayed so long, no anger directed at her. Just a man who drove 4 hours to bring his daughter and grandson home. We loaded everything we had and left. Gavin stayed behind, kept the house, kept his job, kept living like his wife and kid hadn't just walked out. He called once a week for the first month. Logistics only. When's the divorce? What about the house? Insurance situation? Never asked how my mom was doing. Never asked about me. By the time she started chemo, he'd stopped calling entirely. Pop drove my mom to chemo 3 times a week, 40 minutes each way. He'd sit in that waiting room for hours with a newspaper and a thermos of coffee, just so she didn't have to walk out alone. Nana kept the house running, made sure I got to school, picked up extra shifts at the fabric shop to cover what insurance wouldn't. They were in their mid-60s. They didn't hesitate, but I could see what it was doing to Pop even though he'd never say it. He got quieter, started going out to the garage at night and sitting in his truck with the engine off, staring at nothing. One night I found him out there and asked if he was okay. He said he should have fought harder to stop the marriage, that he saw what Gavin was and didn't push hard enough. I told him it wasn't his fault. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Pop carried that guilt the whole time. Never let it slow him down, but he carried it. I watched my mom lose her hair, lose weight, lose the ability to walk upstairs without stopping halfway. Some days, she couldn't get out of bed. I'd bring her water and sit on the floor next to her doing homework so she wasn't alone. Through all of it, Gavin never showed up. There was one day I'll never shake. My mom had a bad reaction to a round of chemo. Pop rushed her to the ER at 2 in the morning. Nana stayed home with me, but neither of us slept. We sat at the kitchen table waiting for the phone to ring. When Pop called around 6 a.m. and said she was stable, Nana put her head down on the table and I heard her cry for the first and only time in my life. I texted Gavin that morning, told him Mom was in the hospital, told him it was bad. He read the message. I saw the red receipt. He didn't respond for 11 hours. And when he finally did, he asked if the hospital visit would affect the insurance premiums. His ex-wife was in the ER, and his son had been up all night terrified, and the man wanted to know about premiums. I deleted the conversation and didn't text him again for 3 years. During her treatment, my mom did something I didn't find out about until after she was gone. She met with an estate attorney and drew up a will. She left everything to me: savings, assets, and most importantly, her half of the house she'd paid into with Gavin. Got it notarized, filed properly, and designated my grandparents as my legal guardians. Did it all quietly. Pop told me later that in her final weeks, she seemed calmer than she'd been in years, more like herself, and I think this was why. For the first time since she married Gavin, she was doing something he couldn't undo. She wasn't asking permission. She wasn't running it by anyone. She was just handling it. She knew exactly what Gavin would come for the second she was gone, and she made sure he couldn't get it. She passed away 11 months after the diagnosis. I was 14. I'm not going to try to put that into words. If you've lost a parent, you already know what that is. If you haven't, nothing I type here is going to get you there. Gavin didn't even wait a full month. 3 weeks after we buried my mom, he called and asked to speak to me. I got on the phone. No, I'm sorry. No, how are you doing? He went straight to it. Listen, I've been looking into the situation with the house. Your mom's will is going to get contested. It should have transferred to me automatically as the surviving spouse. He paused like he was reading off a script. The simplest thing for everybody would be if you just signed your portion over. We can do it quick and clean. No lawyers, no headaches. I was 14, 3 weeks out from watching my mom get put in the ground, and this man was running a sales pitch on me for her property. Pop took the phone before I could respond. I heard him from the next room, and it was the angriest I'd ever heard him. After that call, Pop sat me down and explained everything. The will, the deed, my rights. My mom's attorney had made it airtight. Gavin's name was only on his half. My half was mine. Done. But Gavin kept pushing. Every few weeks, a new angle. The guilt play. Said my mom would have wanted him to have the whole house. The family play. Said we should handle it between us. As if we were still a family. Pop and Nana shut him down every time. They were the wall between me and Gavin, and at 14, 15, 16, I needed that wall. I got through high school at my grandparents' place. Decent grades. Played basketball mostly to burn off the angry energy that builds up when you're a teenager who lost his mom and got ditched by his dad. Pop taught me cars on weekends. Retired mechanic. Believed every man should be able to do his own oil change and brakes at minimum. Saturday mornings in that garage, hands black with grease, radio on some classic rock station, Pop walking me through how to read a torque wrench. Those hours did more for me than Gavin managed in his entire run as my father. Pop didn't lecture. He'd hand me a tool and let me figure it out. If I messed up, he'd show me once, then hand it back. No speeches, no power plays. There was one Saturday I was trying to change a brake rotor, and I kept stripping the bolt, getting frustrated, slamming the wrench down. Pop watched me for about a minute, then walked over and said, "The bolt's not your enemy. You're fighting it instead of working with it. Apply steady pressure. Let the tool do the job." Then he walked back to his side of the garage. I cooled off, tried again, and the bolt came right out. He never said another word about it. But I've thought about that moment 100 times since. Steady pressure. Let the tool do the job. That's basically how I handled everything with Gavin later on. No screaming, no emotional outbursts, just steady, documented, legal pressure until the bolt came loose. Pop also taught me something else during those years that I didn't fully appreciate at the time. He showed me what it looks like when a man takes care of his family without keeping score. Not like Gavin, who made sure you knew exactly what he'd done for you and what you owed him for it. I got into a state school upstate. Partial scholarship, covered the rest working at an auto parts store near campus, studied accounting, kept my head down and built a life that had nothing to do with my dad. Sophomore year, I ran into one of his old coworkers at a gas station near campus. Guy recognized my last name and asked how my dad was doing. Told him we didn't really talk. He got uncomfortable and mentioned that Gavin used to complain at work about being stuck with the house payments and having an ungrateful ex-wife. That's what he called the woman who put $42,000 into his house and died while he calculated whether her chemo was worth the expense. I thanked the guy, got in my car, and drove back to campus. During college, Gavin was a ghost. A text on my birthday maybe, a holiday call under 3 minutes. He was still living in the house I co-owned, paying his half of the mortgage, pretending my half didn't exist. I didn't push the issue yet, but I started keeping a folder. Every text, every email, every voicemail. The accounting student in me understood one thing. Paper trails win cases. After graduation, I got a job at a small accounting firm about an hour from my grandparents. Entry level. Got my own apartment. Started stacking savings. Gavin was basically a stranger, and I was fine with that. If he'd left it alone, none of what comes next would have happened. 3 months ago, Sunday night, scrolling through my phone when a photo stopped me. Gavin in a suit. Some woman I'd never seen. Standing in front of a courthouse. Caption about new beginnings. The man had gotten married. She was younger than him. Late 20s maybe. He was 46. Dark hair. Big smile. Hanging onto his arm like he was the greatest thing that ever happened to her. Showed Pop the photo over coffee the next morning. He looked at it for about 2 seconds, set my phone down, and went back to his mug. Then, without looking up, he said, "Keep your guard up. He's gonna want something." Pop saw right through Gavin. Always did. Sure enough, a week later, Gavin called. First time in months. Told me he'd gotten married like I hadn't already seen the post. I told him I knew. That threw him. Then he hit me with the bonus round. Jennifer, the new wife, was pregnant. That's why they'd rushed the courthouse thing. He dropped it like I was supposed to light up and throw confetti. I didn't say much, just let him talk. He wasn't calling to share good news with his son. He was warming me up. After 22 years of watching this man operate, I knew the pattern. Charm first, set up second, then the ask. He invited me to come by the house the following weekend. Said he and Jennifer wanted to discuss something important. Wouldn't tell me what, just that it needed to happen in person. I said I'd think about it. Called Pop that night. He went quiet for about 10 seconds, which for Pop is a 5-alarm fire. He told me to go, but to go ready. Listen to everything. Don't agree to anything. Don't sign anything. Call me the second you leave. I spent the rest of that week getting my stuff together. Pulled every document I had on the house. The original purchase agreement, my mom's will, the deed, property tax records going back years. Scanned everything into a secure folder. Bookmarked 3 real estate attorneys with strong reviews. Screenshotted the current estimated value of the house from 2 different sites. If Gavin was planning a move, I was walking in there with my homework done and my receipts in order. Drove the 4 hours that Saturday. Hadn't been to that house in years. Walking through the front door felt weird. Same layout, but nothing else was the same. New furniture, new paint, and on the mantle where there used to be a photo of me and my mom at a pumpkin patch, there was a framed picture of Gavin and Jennifer at some beach resort, both grinning. My mom and I had been completely scrubbed from this place. Jennifer was in the kitchen when I came in, visibly pregnant. 6, 7 months along. She seemed nice enough, nervous. Shook my hand and said it was great to finally meet me. That word told me everything. Gavin hadn't exactly been advertising my existence to her. She kept glancing at him before she spoke, like she needed clearance. I recognized that dynamic immediately. My mom used to do the same thing, and watching Jennifer do it made my stomach drop, because I wasn't just looking at Gavin's new wife. I was looking at the early stages of the same cycle. She was already checking his face before she opened her mouth, already adjusting herself around his reaction. She had no idea what was coming. Or maybe she did, somewhere deep down, and she was already telling herself it was normal. We sat down in the living room. Gavin didn't bother with small talk. He leaned forward and said he and Jennifer had come to a decision about how things would work going forward. Not a conversation, a decision, already made. He was just here to deliver it. Before he got into it, I asked to use the bathroom. Partly because I needed to, partly because I wanted to walk through the house one more time. I went down the hallway past the room that used to be mine. It was a nursery now. Soft yellow walls, a crib in the corner with a mobile hanging over it. My room. The one where I used to lie awake listening to Gavin interrogate my mom over receipts. The one where I sat on the floor next to her bed doing homework while she was too weak to stand. They turned it into a nursery and didn't think twice. On the way back, I passed the hall closet and noticed a cardboard box shoved behind the vacuum, flap open. Photo frames inside, face down. I could see the edge of one I recognized. Green border. The pumpkin patch photo. My mom and me. She was laughing in that picture. They hadn't just taken it off the mantle. They'd boxed it up and buried it next to cleaning supplies. I closed the closet door, went back to the living room, sat down, and looked at Gavin. After seeing that, I was done. Whatever he was about to ask for, the answer was already no. First, he told me they didn't want me calling him Dad anymore. He said, "Jennifer and I have talked about it, and we think it would be confusing for the baby to hear someone else using that word. Going forward, I'd prefer if you just called me Gavin, like we were acquaintances who happened to share a last name." I just nodded and let him keep going. Second part, he said they didn't want me having any contact with the baby, not until the kid was old enough to understand what a half-sibling was. So basically, he wanted me to not exist until they decided it was convenient for me to exist again. Jennifer leaned forward and said, "We really hope you can respect this. It's not personal. We're just trying to protect our family. I hope there are no hard feelings." Then the real reason for the whole meeting came out. Gavin said he needed me to sign my share of the house over to him. Said he needed the property fully in his name so he could eventually pass it down to Jennifer and their baby. He said it casual, like asking someone to forward an email. It's the right thing to do. This way the house stays in the family and everyone's taken care of. It's what makes sense. And then he slid a stack of papers across the coffee table. Pre-filled property transfer form. My name already printed in the blanks. A pen sitting on top. Pointed toward me. He'd filled out the paperwork in advance and set a pen on top like I was going to sign my mom's legacy away without a single question. I looked at the pen, looked at the form, looked at him, and for about 2 seconds, some small trained part of me actually considered it. Not because it made sense, but because there was still a 6-year-old kid somewhere inside me who wanted this man to be proud of him, who wanted to hand over the paper and have Gavin finally look at him like a son. Then I looked at Gavin's face, and I didn't see a father asking his son for help. I saw a guy running numbers. Something just went flat inside me. Not anger, not sadness, just done. This man was never going to change. I was a problem in his new life, and he wanted me to make myself disappear so he didn't have to deal with it. I told him I wasn't signing anything, that since he and his wife had decided I wasn't part of their family, I'd be making that mutual. Every legal sense of the word. He'd be hearing from my attorney within the week. The whole calm act he'd been doing the entire meeting dropped instantly. There's no reason to bring lawyers into this. This is a family matter. We can work this out between us. I looked at him and said, "We stopped being family about 10 minutes ago when you asked me to stop being your son." Jennifer jumped in, voice shaking. "You're being completely unreasonable. All we're asking for is stability for our baby. Why are you making this so difficult?" I looked at her for a long second. Then I said, "I hope things work out for you, Jennifer. I really do. But you should pay very close attention to how he treats people when they stop being useful to him. Because eventually, it's going to be your turn." She went quiet after that. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. Gavin followed me to the driveway talking fast, telling me I'd regret this. I got in my car and pulled out without looking back. Called Pop from the highway. Told him everything. He listened, then said 4 words. "Now we go to work." Monday morning. Sitting across from a real estate attorney named Phil Hartwick. Late 50s. No nonsense. Been handling property disputes in the county for over 20 years. I came in with everything. Mom's will, purchase agreement, deed, tax records, bank statements showing my mom's $42,000 down payment. Phil went through all of it and told me my position was solid. Phil gave me 2 options. Negotiate a buyout where Gavin pays me fair market value for my half, or file a partition action to force a sale of the entire property. I asked Phil which one he'd recommend. He leaned back and said, "If you want this done clean, and you don't want to spend the next year going back and forth with a guy who's never negotiated in good faith a day in his life, you file the partition and let the court handle it." I didn't even think about it. I told Phil to file the partition. I wanted the house sold. No negotiations. No back and forth. Clean cut. Phil sent Gavin a formal legal notice that same week. The day it arrived, Gavin called me 6 times. Every single one went to voicemail. From that point on, all communication went through my attorney or email. Everything documented. No more phone calls that could be twisted later. Gavin's first real response was a long email. Called me ungrateful. Said he'd kept a roof over my head for years. Said my mom would have been ashamed of me. I forwarded it to Phil without replying. Phil told me to keep saving everything. Build the file. So I did. Over the next 2 months, Gavin ran through every play he had, and watching it happen in real time was almost educational. First came guilt. He couldn't afford a buyout. Jennifer was stressed. I was putting her health at risk. When guilt didn't work, he switched to victimhood. A long message about wanting a normal father-son relationship. When that failed, rage. A 3-minute voicemail calling me ungrateful. Then he circled all the way back to charm, asking if we could just talk like 2 adults. The father-son email was the one that got me, though. This man told me to stop calling him dad, told me to vanish from his life, then played the wounded father card because I threatened his free housing. You almost have to respect the range. He called Pop directly, asked him to talk some sense into me. Pop told him all communication goes through the attorney. Gavin tried Nana next, thinking she'd be softer. She told him the same thing, then added that he should be ashamed of himself for what he did to her daughter. Last time either of them spoke to him. One thing that gave Phil a serious edge was the paper trail I'd been building since college. Every email, every text, every voicemail where Gavin tried to guilt me or pressure me about the house. Phil used all of it to show the judge exactly what kind of person we were dealing with. It didn't directly impact the property ruling, but it painted a picture. The partition moved through the court smoothly. Gavin hired his own attorney, who argued that because Gavin had been paying the mortgage for years, he deserved a larger share. They tried to argue for credits based on his payments and maintenance, but it didn't erase ownership. It just got factored into the final numbers. My mom's contribution was documented. The will was valid. My 50% wasn't going anywhere. Gavin's lawyer also tried arguing the will was signed under duress because my mom was terminally ill. Phil had anticipated that. He brought documentation from the estate attorney and medical records, confirming my mom was fully lucid when she signed. The judge didn't even ask for a rebuttal. Looked at Gavin's lawyer, looked at the paperwork, and moved on. That was the moment I knew it was over. Not a dramatic courtroom speech. A judge flipping past Gavin's best argument like junk mail. The court ordered the house sold. Gavin fought it to the wire with delays and extension requests, but the judge set a hard deadline. The house went on the market and sold in 3 weeks. Final sale, $310,000. The remaining mortgage balance was still around $112,000, plus closing costs and attorney fees on both sides. When the dust settled, my share came out to just over $89,000. Clean deposit into my account. While the property case was moving, I took care of the rest. Had my attorney draft a formal no-contact notice and send it to Gavin. Filed the paperwork to change my last name to my mom's maiden name. Updated my next of kin, medical proxy, emergency contacts, everything. Removed him from anything that legally tied us together. And I had Phil make it clear that if Gavin or Jennifer contacted me again after the notice, we'd pursue a restraining order. When the last form was processed, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just relief. There was grief in there too. Not grief for Gavin. Grief for the version of him I kept waiting for my whole life. The dad who'd actually want to know me. Who'd come to a game, or call to check in, or just be normal for once. That guy never existed. But part of me never stopped hoping he would, and filing those papers was finally admitting he wasn't coming. Gavin's last move came through Jennifer. She called me about a week after the house closed, screaming before I even finished saying hello. Are you happy now? We're living in my parents' basement with a newborn because of you. You took everything from us. Your father is broken over this. And here's the thing. I could hear in her voice that she believed every word. She wasn't performing. Gavin had told her his version, and she'd swallowed it whole, the same way my mom had years ago. I almost felt something for her. Almost. But then she said something that stopped me cold. She said, "He told me you signed the house over years ago. He told me it was fully his." Gavin had been lying to her the entire time. She didn't even know my name was still on the deed until the legal notice showed up. He'd married this woman, moved her into a house he only half owned, and told her it was all his. That's who she was defending. A man who'd been lying to her face since before their wedding day. I let her keep going. Selfish, greedy, heartless. Said everyone in their circle thought I was a terrible person. She went on for about 4 minutes straight. When she finally ran out of steam, I said, "Jennifer, he's not my father. He made sure of that himself. Lose my number." And I hung up. She called back twice. Blocked her, blocked Gavin. Set up email filters so anything from either of them routes to a folder my attorney can access. Clean, documented, done. Here's what I'll leave you with. I don't feel guilty. Some of you are going to say I should have been the bigger person, should have let him keep the house, and walked away. And honestly, there were nights during the legal process where I lay awake running that exact argument, wondering if I was doing this for my mom or for myself, wondering if part of me just wanted to hurt Gavin the way he'd hurt us. What I came back to every time was this. My mom worked herself to the bone saving that money. She put every dollar she had into that house, while Gavin treated her like she was disposable. She got sick and he told her to call her parents. She died and he came for her assets before her headstone was set. Gavin already took everything from my mom. I wasn't going to let him do the same thing to me. I put the money into a high-yield savings account. I'm working on a business plan for an auto repair shop, something I've been thinking about since those Saturday mornings in Pop's garage. I've already started looking at commercial spaces within driving distance of my grandparents. It feels right. Like I'm taking what my mom left me and building something she'd actually be proud of. Pop and Nana are doing well. Pop's knees aren't great. Nana takes the stairs slower. But they're still sharp and still the toughest people I know. Sunday dinners every weekend. Football in the den. They're my family. As for Gavin, haven't heard from him since Jennifer's call. Don't expect to. He spent my whole life treating me like a problem he wanted to go away. He got his wish, but it happened on my terms. And that's the part that makes all the difference. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.